There's probably no subject that quite captures the public imagination like missing person cases. I mean, I've followed a lot of them over the years myself, and one thing you'll begin to notice if you do is how they can tend to be sensationalized and made out to be a lot more mysterious than they may have actually been. Well, joining me today is someone who I think can help shine some light on these kinds of cases and what we can learn about future search efforts, and that's Haley Zega, who at age 6 actually was one of the missing herself. She was lost in the Arkansas wilderness for 2.5 days, and so I had a lot of questions for Haley about how we can understand what happens when a person, especially a young child, goes missing and how we can better enact future search efforts. We're going to have a great conversation with Haley Zega right now. Seldom do we ever see in the literature pertaining to these kinds of experiences an actual interview with the person who went missing. And even with the diligence that many reporters and researchers put into their work on these subjects, it's usually secondhand knowledge. And maybe it's just the side of me that loves history and historical research. But I feel like if you've got primary sources, you should use those before you use secondary sources. To give a historical analogy, I'm not a professional historian, but I think that that aspect is often missing in various commentary that is written, and it doesn't just relate to the missing person cases. I see it in a lot of different kinds of media, where unfortunately they don't go to the person who had the experience. People instead choose to write their narratives based on secondhand information, and often you will see that a lot of information gets lost along the way. And so I think it's very important to be careful with where we get our information, be discerning with how we interpret what we do have, but always, if you have that opportunity, and you can do so in a way that is respectful and in promotion of the furtherance of legitimate knowledge, I think you should always try to get the best data direct from the source that you can. And so I feel very privileged today to have Haley Zega joining us for this conversation, which is bound to be unlike any, perhaps, that you have heard about this subject. So Haley, welcome to the program.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. This is so much fun.
Yeah. Do you do a lot of interviews for shows?
Um, I did when I was younger, and very occasionally I will sometimes get people who are interested, but and want to talk about it, like various, mostly like local news back from where I grew up, kind of want to do like updates and, whatever. But I've told this story probably 1,000 times or more. This is the story I've told the most times in my life.
Wow.
So,
Well, it's an
I'm
amazing.
very used to talking about it.
It's an amazing story. And again,
Yeah.
as I was doing some follow-up on it, I mean, I've read AP articles. I saw a video interview with the renowned researcher Russell Targ where he was talking about that. Lauren found that, and talk about your jaw dropping. I mean, I thought it was neat to hear from you. And then I saw Russell Targ talking in depth about your experience. And I'm like, my gosh, whoa. So, and sometimes life just kind of throws these, what I call breadcrumbs to you in the Hansel and Gretel sense of things, the little breadcrumbs that lead you home. So again, I'm just thrilled to be able to be here talking with you today. Why don't we get right into things? It was 2001. You were how old at the time?
I had just turned 6.
Wow.
So I was in kindergarten. I was very, very young.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And my grandparents are very nature oriented. They're very much about being in the outdoors, and they kind of thought that I was growing up as too much of a city kid. Uh, which is funny to say that I'm in New York City now, and it's funny to say, yeah, my grandparents thought I was too much of a city kid. I grew up in Fayetteville, Arkansas. Um, but they wanted me to appreciate the natural world. And so they decided to take me out on a hike in the Ozarks National Forest. And it's probably the most famous hike in Arkansas, or one of the most famous hikes in Arkansas. It's out to Whitaker Point, Hawksbill Craig. It's a really, really naturally beautiful area along the bluffs above the river. But it's also kind of a treacherous hike, even for an experienced, well, for not an experienced, but like an intermediate hiker, a casual hiker. It'll knock the wind out of you
Yeah.
because it's up and down a lot of hills, and it's really dense forest. So it was pretty ambitious to take a 6-year-old who had never been in the woods out there, but that's what they decided to do. So
What did you
that's
think
kind of
about
like,
it, by the way? I mean, were you enjoying it? Did you feel at home in nature?
um, I feel at home in nature now.
Hmm.
I absolutely did not at that point, and I think that was part of what got me in so much trouble. I got to the point where I got really tired and I didn't want to be out there anymore. Um, and it's because it's not really a short hike either. It's, it takes a couple hours to hike out there and hike back. And I was getting really tired and I was doing that little kid thing where I was really fussy, and I didn't want to walk anymore. And yeah, I was cranky. I mean, I think I probably thought it was pretty and, liked seeing the trees, but I had had enough by the time I got lost. So
All right. So leading up to you getting lost, you're with your grandparents, correct?
right. Yeah. My grandparents and a couple of family friends.
And it was about what time of day when you got separated from them?
It was afternoon. It's still daylight for a couple of hours, and it was mid-spring. It was the end of April, so it wasn't as much getting dark quickly at that point of the year. But yeah, it was afternoon. I really can't remember exactly what time of day, but I do remember that I had like several hours before it was supposed to be getting dark.
Yeah.
Like we were making good time on the hike. So
Yeah, and this is part of the Ozarks by definition, right?
yes, yeah, it's kind of right in the heart of the Ozarks. And yeah, you really can't get, it's like the quintessential Ozark location. It's very sparsely populated. Just right in the middle of the mountains. Yeah, it's like if you were to Google like a picture of the Ozarks, you would probably get a picture of Hawksbill Craig. Like yeah.
In fact, I think I have done just that, and I believe I also saw a photo that you posted online of that location, which
Yeah, I was just out there in December. Yeah, I go out there. I try to go out there every year.
Wow, so you return annually to the same area where you had this experience.
Yes, yeah. Like I said, I did not necessarily appreciate nature as a 6-year-old, but as a 23, almost 24-year-old, I can't get enough of it. Yeah. I love camping and hiking and canoeing and pretty much anything you can do outdoors. I love to do it. And I think that part of the Ozarks has a special place in my heart. And there's also the waterfall that's out there that's named after me. And that's like kind of, yeah, it's like kind of a, not a novelty, but it's like anytime I bring someone home to the Ozarks, I'm like, you have to see my waterfall. You have to come see my waterfall, because I get really excited about it. And it's on the way to the Hawksbill Craig. So,
wow.
And yeah, the waterfall's actually like where I was last seen.
Wow,
so.
That is incredible. Well, that makes a perfect segue here. And when I go there, because I love that area, I've got a friend, in fact, one of the producers of this program, Race Hobbs, who lives right there in that area of Arkansas. And
yeah.
he is relocated to Utah now, which is where our radio network is situated. But I still got to get through there sometime and check out your waterfall. I'd love to see it.
You really should. It's so beautiful. Like, even if you don't go to the waterfall, just the Ozarks, I can't commend them enough. I'm trying to get all of my Yankee friends out there. Just because I'm like, you know what, Arkansas, you might have an idea of how it is in your mind, but it's not like that. It's so beautiful, and the people are so friendly and open. And that's where my heart is. My heart is situated in the Ozark Mountains.
Yeah, well, easy to see how you could leave a part of it there after what occurred. So let's pick up with the waterfall. You say that was where you were last seen. So we travel back in time again now.
Yeah.
To the year of 2001. There you are. You're 6 years old. It's getting late. You're getting cranky. And they saw you at this waterfall. Haley, what happens next in your memory? So
to get down the waterfall, or to get to see the waterfall, you have to climb down a tree. The top of the waterfall is kind of flush with the trail. And to get to see the actual falls, you have to climb down a tree. And my grandpa was like, I want to see this waterfall. So I'm just going to pop over, climb down this tree. And I wanted to see it too. I really wanted to see the waterfall. And they were like, no, you're too little. You can't climb down this tree. Like, you just can't. And I was not happy with that answer. I was already kind of fussy. And that just sent me over the edge, metaphorically speaking. And I just was like, you know what? I'm going to sit here on this rock at the top of this waterfall, and I am not going to move until somebody carries me. Which, if you have been on a hike in the mountains at all, that's really not an option. Carrying a 6-year-old on a narrow trail on top of 200-foot bluffs, not going to happen.
Right.
But of course, I didn't know or care. I was determined that I was not moving from that spot until someone picked me up and carried me. And my grandparents were like, absolutely not. We're not going to do that. So they did that thing where when a little kid is being stubborn, you start to walk away and you're like, we're walking away. Okay, we're leaving. And, the kid normally gets up and follows whoever's, leaving. And I tried to do that. I tried to get up and follow them. But that forest is so dense, and especially in the springtime when the leaves are starting to come back and you're starting to get more leaf cover, it's really, someone can disappear from you really, really quickly. And within a matter of seconds, you won't be able to see them anymore. And I was also quite a bit shorter than I am now. And I just lost them. I just couldn't see them anymore. And so I saw a trail that I thought there was like a big bank of trees, and there was the main trail curving around it one way. And then I saw that there was another little trail that looked like it was going to curve around the other way. And I thought it was supposed to like meet up and merge with the main trail. So that's the one I took for some reason. And so because I think I thought I was going to like head them off. So I followed that trail, and I think it was probably like a deer path or something, but I was immediately lost within minutes.
Okay, a couple of things. So you believe you were following a deer path or a game trail, and I've spent a lot of time in the woods myself. I'm an avid hiker. I've done a lot in the outdoors, and some might say foolishly, I've gone off the beaten path. But for me, I grew up in the woods, and this, again, correct me if I'm wrong, this was your first real experience in nature, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, the house that I grew up in had a creek next to it, and I loved playing in the creek, but that's still middle of the city. I had never been, because where I was lost in Newton County, Arkansas is truly remote.
Yeah.
There is almost nobody lives out there. It is very dense forest, no infrastructure. And that was my first experience with something like that. Yeah.
So you described, being as short as you were at age 6, and the foliage, the fresh spring growth, that made it difficult for you to even be able to see where you were going.
That's exactly right.
And so you followed the path that you thought would lead you back around to where they were, but this, again, seemed to have been off the beaten path. This wasn't per se a human path. It was a game trail, and hence it got you away from where your company would have known to look for you, and you, of course, were further from them, so you couldn't
That's
find...
exactly right.
See,
and it's interesting too. I've been out there every year about since, and I go out there with my mom, or I go out there with my my stepbrother, or my boyfriend, and we've gotten ourselves off the path. It's not hard to do, even for someone who knows the trail, who has been out there 100 times. It's not hard to get turned around and sidetracked out there, because the trails are well maintained, but they're not like the most clear. They don't have, there are trail markers, but it doesn't have like edging or anything like that. So depending on what time of year you go out there, it is not hard at all to get yourself turned around.
Wow. Yeah, I tell you, that's so frightening. And when you're out there hiking in the future, please don't get lost again. We like having you back here at Civilization.
I'll do my best.
Yeah, but well, let's get back to your story here. Again, talking with Haley Zega. You, as a young 6-year-old, you follow this game trail, and at that point, could you still hear your grandparents or anyone else?
No, because I think if I could have heard them, I would have known to shout, but I couldn't. It was almost like a curtain had been dropped, basically. Like, I got away from them, and I was just suddenly isolated. Like, there was just no indication of where they were. I was basically very suddenly alone and very suddenly lost. It happened instantaneously.
Yeah. How soon after you, again, I know this was a long time, but you seem to have a very vivid recollection. how soon after you got lost did night begin to fall?
A couple of hours.
Okay.
It wasn't one of my immediate concerns. The moment I knew I was lost, I formulated a plan, but nightfall was not an immediate concern for me. Of course, eventually it did get dark, but I had enough time to kind of figure out where I wanted to sleep
Hmm.
and like formulate a plan, and rather poorly, but I did manage to execute that plan. So I guess I did kind of have an awareness that night was going to fall, but I had enough time to kind of prepare for it.
Yeah, that's fascinating that as a 6-year-old you had the forethought to think this out like that. I mean, and
Yeah.
it's funny because from person to person, some people, I've got friends who, they're in their 20s or 30s and they say, yeah, I don't remember being in kindergarten. I have very little memory of that. Me, on the other hand, I can remember back when I was 2 years old sitting across from my mom on the couch with her pregnant belly stuck out and us speculating about what my new sibling would be, a boy or a girl. And of course, later on, I
Yeah.
found out it was a boy. And, so I have vivid memories, but to think of you as a 6-year-old and having an idea. Now, let me ask you this too. So it was April, you said. What was the temperature like, both in the day and in the evenings?
So the temperature during the day was very comfortable.
Mhm.
Actually, I had a sweatshirt in the car with me, and we wound up leaving it in the car because it was such a
Mm.
beautiful day. It was so warm, which left me in a t-shirt and shorts, which was fine for the hike. But then it got dark, and it gets really cold at night in the spring,
Yeah.
and especially it's not like the Rockies or anything, but it's higher elevation than the rest of Arkansas, and it does get colder up there at night. And I was in a t-shirt and shorts, a Cape Canaveral like NASA t-shirt.
Ah,
Always been
cool.
a bit of a nerd, but
That's okay. Same here.
yeah. And I also, the other problem was I was soaking wet because I kept falling in the river.
Oh, really? So you were close to the water and you had fallen completely in.
Yeah. So, well, I started out on the bluffs, and then I managed to find one of the only safe ways somehow to get from the top of the bluffs where I was down into the river valley and next to the river. And so I was there by the first day. And I kept falling
Now, really
into
quickly,
the river.
on that point, and I have one more very pertinent wardrobe question. When you're hiking, normally you wear hiking boots. What kind of footwear did you have?
I was wearing tennis shoes.
Oh, okay. Now, see, one of the news
Yeah.
reports, oh, no, I'm sorry. I think it may have been the interview with Russell Targ. I think he had referred to flip-flops. So, again,
No, I was wearing tennis shoes.
okay, good. Yeah, because
Because
I
I had socks and shoes. Like I vividly remember my socks.
good.
Because
Yeah.
I hate wet socks, and I remember my socks being wet,
Mhm.
and I like took them off at one point, and I think I lost one of my socks. But yeah.
Okay, so that's this is important to and again, people would often ask, how does someone lose an article of clothing while they're out there in the woods? In your case, I mean, you were wet and you were trying to dry your socks off. Okay.
Yeah.
See,
And I also I was one of those kids who had a comfort object, and mine was a blankie, and I didn't have my blankie out there, and so I was using the sock as like a comfort object.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, now you said that you were up on the bluffs and trying to navigate safely down into the river valley. Why?
Yeah.
Were you trying to follow the river?
Thought I just needed a landmark, something to follow. And I also thought that water would be good, although I never drank any of it. I, for some reason, wanted to be near the water, and I'm not even sure how I knew that there was a river there. Like I obviously know that now, that it's the Buffalo River, and it's one of the very famous rivers because it's nationally protected, but I don't know how. I don't think I knew that as a 6-year-old. I don't know how I think I just sort of started walking in one direction, and then there was a river there. And I don't know why I thought I needed to get down the bluffs, but that was like something I had to do, and that's what I did. So yeah, and so I got to the river on the first day.
Huh. How many days total were you out in the wilderness?
2.5, like 50 some odd hours.
Do you remember being able to drink any water while you were out there?
So I was by the river, but I didn't drink any water because I didn't think it was safe.
Yeah.
I thought it was going to make me sick.
Hmm.
So I didn't drink any of the water and I didn't eat anything the whole time I was out there because I didn't know it was safe.
Yeah.
And I think eventually I probably would have drank water if it had gone and much farther than it did. But yeah, I didn't. I was when they found me, I was pretty dehydrated.
I can imagine. Yeah. Well, so you first day you make it down to the river, correct?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's right.
Did where did you sleep? What was your plan? Did you sleep by the river?
I actually, the reason I was so wet, I had formulated a plan. There were helicopters flying over the valley at this point,
Hmm.
and I wasn't positive that they were looking for me, but I thought that they might be. Um, and so my thought was if I slept on a rock in the middle of the river, they would be able to see me better because I wouldn't be under the tree cover anymore.
Right.
And so I got onto the rock in the middle of the river, and it took me a couple of tries. I kept falling in the river trying to get out there, but
Oh.
eventually I made it, and that was my plan. And unfortunately, they didn't see me, but still, for a 6-year-old, that's not a horrible plan.
No, not at
Uh,
all. I think it's really important to hear your thought process, and that's why I'm trying to be as specific with
yeah,
these questions because I mean, in future instances where people, children, adults, whatever go missing, I mean, some of your thought process could be incredibly valuable. And of course,
definitely.
there have been books written about this, and of course, as we'll hear, there's a lot more to this story. We're talking with Haley Zega. Where we left off, we had just reached the end of your first day. So let's pick up with the second day. How does that day begin and what unfolds?
The second day, so I remember the thing is, I was never a kid. Like I wasn't scared. That was just not because I was like, I'm gonna make it through this. Like I'm gonna, I just was convinced that yeah, I had a concept of death, I think, but I just didn't think it was gonna happen to me.
Hmm.
I was just like, nope, I'm gonna get through it. And I thought I was gonna do it myself. Like I was convinced that I was gonna walk myself out of the woods. Um, but I do remember the first night, like lying on that rock and thinking, I really hope this is a dream.
Hmm.
And then of course it wasn't a dream, and I, woke up the next day on top of a rock in the middle of a river. And I thought, okay, I need to keep walking, which is not if you're lost, you should not keep moving. I
Yeah.
know that now. But so I got off the rock and I got back off out of the river and onto the bank. And I thought, okay, I'm going to follow this river, and the river will lead to a gas station, or it'll lead to a bridge, which will lead to a road, which will lead to a gas station. And I'm going to call my parents.
Hmm.
Like that was the plan. And the helicopters were still flying over. And so I started throwing sand in the air and like trying anything to get them to see me. And they didn't. But I was also shouting my name, my parents' names, their phone numbers, like just in case anybody heard me.
Yeah.
So yeah, the second day I walked along the river, and I think I kind of knew it was getting dire at that point. I think day 3 was like really when it sort of hit me that like I was still very determined, but I think I was starting to realize the gravity of the situation by day 2, but I just kept walking, and I would take breaks and sit and, take a nap or whatever. But yeah, that second day was mostly just pushing forward, just,
Yeah.
trying to cover as much ground as possible.
Do you remember seeing while you were out there any wildlife?
So the only wildlife I ever saw were birds and a caterpillar, and I gave the caterpillar a name.
Two spots?
But white spot,
White
yeah.
spot, yeah.
But the thing is that at that point in the spring, I found out later that it was a very real fear that they thought I could have been dragged off by a mountain lion or something. Because
Yeah.
there are a couple of bears in the Ozarks, but it's, a pretty small population. But wildcats or mountain lions are a real fear. And I was small enough that I would have been easily dragged off by a mountain lion had it so chosen to
Yeah.
go that direction, but I never saw any. I
Wow.
never saw any. I didn't even see any deer.
Hmm.
I just birds and bugs,
Birds and
which is
bugs.
yeah,
Well,
yeah,
consider yourself fortunate.
very.
How does day two end? You know, were you still on the river? Did you sleep on a rock that night as well? Were you in the
I
forest?
Day two I slept in a cave
A cave. Where did you find the cave?
because I thought it was gonna rain.
Hmm.
Because my mom, when I was little, she told me that if the moon is walking in water, like if the way that the clouds look around the moon, that means it's gonna rain.
Hmm.
And that's what I thought. You know, I saw that that's what the moon looked like that night, and I thought it was gonna rain. So I found a little cave, and I slept in there to keep out of the rain.
Haley and the
I don't think it
caterpillar.
did rain, but
Yeah. So you and your caterpillar hung out in the cave for that evening. Was the cave by the river or?
yeah, yeah. I never really strayed that far from the river once I found it. I would walk into because during the day it actually did get kind of hot.
Mhm.
Um, so I would kind of wander into the shade occasionally, but I never lost shouting distance really from the river because I felt like that. Thought that was my lifeline.
Yeah.
So
Now that
yeah.
that day where you ended up at the end of the day in the cave, that was a Monday?
Oh, I would have to look at a calendar.
Okay, I
don't
got you.
know.
According to an AP report from 2000, the Associated Press reported that you'd spent Monday night in a cave. So I'm presuming that maybe that
Yeah.
was the yeah.
I was found on May 1st, so that would have been April 30th. 30th, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I
Okay.
had to do math. Yeah, so I guess it was a Monday. I don't know.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so your third day, which was not a full day, they found you on the third day, right?
They found me on the third day. Yeah.
Okay. So you wake up in the cave. Funny question, really quickly. Do you recall having any dreams or anything while you were out there in the woods?
No, I don't remember any dreams. I mean, there were other interesting things happening psychologically, but I don't remember having any dreams at all.
Okay.
I don't think I slept very deeply is the thing. I think it was probably pretty fitful, restless, light sleep. So,
Yeah.
um,
Well,
yeah, I don't.
and that's interesting because if you don't feel like you were very well rested, obviously, of course, you were probably dehydrated. You weren't very well nourished. You hadn't eaten
I
anything.
was also really cold. Yeah.
And you were really cold and wet. Yeah. I mean, these are very bad circumstances for a child to be in. You mentioned other interesting psychological things. Could you elaborate?
Yeah. Yeah. So I was never a kid who had imaginary friends, but in this one instance, I had one.
Hmm.
And her name was Alicia. And I like remember what she looked like. And I remember that she was younger than me and she had a flashlight. And she kept me company. And I think when I was talking earlier about, I don't know why I decided to walk in the direction I did. I remember following her,
Really?
which is such an odd thing, I know, because so many people have said like guardian angel or ghost or what have you, coping mechanism. I don't really know. I still don't know to this day what it was. I'm kind of a skeptical person when it comes to supernatural things, but
Me
I don't
too.
really have another explanation for that.
Yeah.
I love ghost stories,
Uh-huh.
but you know, yeah. So I followed her,
Hmm.
and she was the one who showed me how to get to the river, and basically she was there from the minute I knew I was lost until right before I was found. So, and I think I knew that she was an imaginary friend. Like I wasn't like, this is a real little girl I found in the woods. Like I knew that there was something, ethereal, I suppose, about her. And, yeah, so that, but I know that happens to people. When I was listening to your, show from a couple of weeks ago about the boy and the bear, and you guys talked about other examples of people who have this third man effect
Yeah.
happen to them. And it sounded exactly like what happened to me. But at the same time, there are things about it that I can't explain. Just, how did I get to the river? Of course, it could have been coincidence, but I found the one way to get there, like as a 6-year-old who had never been out there before.
Yeah.
So
Alicia was her name.
yeah,
What did she, I mean, again, this ethereal, and you refer to her, I just want to be very careful to use your
yeah,
descriptions and not put words in your mouth in any way. So your description, you said this was, you classify this interesting psychological phenomena in terms of kind of your worldview. How did she appear? Do you remember how she looked?
yeah, yeah. So I remember specifically. So at that point, I was 6, and I remember that she was 4. And that I seem to recall that she appeared that way because she didn't want to scare me.
Huh.
Yeah.
That's funny.
So it was like she chose how she looked.
Did she say that?
That was, I don't, that's just what I remember how it
Hmm.
kind of manifested, was that she appeared that way because she didn't want to scare me.
Okay.
And I don't know if that's something that she said or if that's something that I conjured up later, but yeah. And she had long black hair, and I actually think I drew a picture of her, and it might be in the book. I don't know. I actually haven't read the book.
Okay.
Uh,
Maybe better.
but yeah, I drew pictures of her after the whole thing, but I never had an imaginary friend again after that, and I never had one previously. So it was a kind of a isolated experience for me. But yeah, she was 4 years old, long black hair. She was wearing a sweatshirt. She had a flashlight. Yeah, she kind of led me around. She stayed with me. We like played games, and she told me stories, and she was just kind of there. She was a presence the entire time that I knew that I was lost.
So, at what point did you first see Alicia? Or do you remember seeing her at least?
Yeah, like minutes really after I went missing, right as soon as I realized, okay, I'm lost.
Hmm.
Then there she was.
I see. What color was her sweatshirt? Do you remember?
I want to say it was red.
Hmm.
I'm pretty sure it was red.
Okay. How did she wear her hair? You said it was long and black?
Mm-hmm. Like long and straight and black.
Just wore it straightened down. Okay.
Yeah.
You said she had a flashlight?
Yeah. Which I don't know because I didn't have any light. I don't but yeah, she had a flashlight in the yeah.
Huh. When you say she had a flashlight, did she carry it, or do you remember seeing a beam, or did you have the perception?
No, I just remember her carrying a flashlight. I don't know.
Okay. You said she told you stories.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember any of the stories she told you?
Not really specifically. I think they were like fairy tales, like any of the fairy tales that any kid would know.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't remember that specifically. The thing I remember the most is like playing patty cake with her. But yeah, I don't remember the conversations that we had really at all. But yeah, I and the interesting thing is too, later on when I started getting really dehydrated, I started to hallucinate.
Oh, really?
And I remember hallucinating a valley full of flamingos. Because I guess that's what a 6-year-old, that's what I hallucinated. And but to me that was a distinct occurrence.
Mm-hmm.
So like it was a different feeling hallucinating the flamingos than this imaginary friend that I had.
And you seem to remember her being there. I mean, I'll put up the air quotes,
Yeah.
being there. But you remember that prior to the hallucinations that you experienced.
Yes. Yeah, the hallucinations happened like as I was starting to kind of become really dehydrated and starting to starve a little bit.
Mm.
Yeah, those were very distinct occurrences that happened much after the fact.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I don't know if it's. I always talk about with my friends having a parental instinct, and even if I'm sitting here with you, talking with you, seeing you drink water, and seeing that you're happy and that you're healthy, I there's something I can't stand about hearing about a child, in such need like that. I mean,
Yeah.
obviously a scary experience. I mean, One more question about Alicia.
Yeah,
Do you recall when you were in the cave, was she there too?
yeah, yeah. And she was on the rock with me the
Hmm.
first night. Yeah, she was there the whole time.
So day 3,
Yeah.
what circumstances led to your discovery and rescue?
It was actually the luckiest thing ever.
Hmm.
Like truly, the the sheer luck is still mind blowing to this day.
Hmm.
I'm like the luckiest person in the world, pretty much. So there was an official search party going on. That it's actually the largest search and rescue operation in Arkansas history, and
Oh,
I
wow.
think I still hold that record. It's not a great record, but
Glad
it's
you're okay.
something. Um, and So there was this massive search effort going on. And when a child goes missing, a lot of times they kind of put together a computer model based on where they think that the kid is going to be, based on like personality and how well the kid knows the area, the age, the sex. Like they kind of try to make a map of where they think that this kid is most likely to be. And so that's where they were searching, that they were focusing their search efforts, and they were also searching along the bluffs, along the bottom of the bluffs because they thought it might have fallen off. And then they also had dogs that were searching. And at one point, by the time that I got found, they actually started to think that it might be a criminal case.
Oh, wow.
They thought that I may have been kidnapped because I was just gone without a trace. And I think one of the search dogs um, stopped, like, tracked a scent and stopped dead at a road. And so they thought, I might have been like thrown into a car or something.
Really quickly about that,
Um,
Haley. So one of the search dogs, presumably following your scent, was led to a road,
yeah, I don't know.
and you
Yeah,
obviously hadn't been there.
right. Yeah,
Interesting. Okay.
I have no idea. I know that sometimes search dogs get false positives,
Sure.
so I don't know. But yeah, I wasn't me. I don't know.
Well, I mean, the reason I bring that up is because in other search cases, often you'll see these cases where, someone will they will mention that the search dogs went directly to a road. And so, that will become something that's emphasized in other disappearances where, again, unfortunately, sometimes these people are never found. And so maybe it's
Right.
important to acknowledge, because I just got to be honest. And I don't know how much you follow the literature about similar disappearances. Do you read much about these or follow these?
Occasionally I do. It's um when I was younger I did more, I think, and I've done some work with like missing children's.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's kind of a long story actually, but I'm an actor,
Hmm.
and that's what I went to school for, and I do devise theater, which is like um, you start from the ground up. You don't start with a script; you create the script as you go. And one of the shows that I did in college it had a component of about a missing child, and so I was the one who went, and I had all the contacts, and I went to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children in Washington D.C., and I interviewed people there. And so I kind of have stayed active in the I don't know if you'd call it a community,
Yeah, sure.
but in the kind of realm of missing children. And so when I hear about cases that are similar to mine, I usually do read about them a little bit. But yeah, it happens more often than I would like.
Yeah.
It seems like every couple of years there's a kid that goes out into the woods, and sometimes it's a happy ending like mine, and sometimes unfortunately it's not. And I think it can be, and it's not, this isn't something that I always tell people, like, I'm not psychologically damaged from my experience. I
Right.
still love hiking and camping and being out in the woods, but it's still kind of surreal to read about it happening to somebody else, I guess, because it's such a unique and crazy experience.
Yeah, that's why I think it's so important to be able to get your perspectives on, your own experience and the kinds of things that you can relate, because I think that can be so useful. And it's another reason I've been compelled to write about it, and I've done a few articles, and I'm sure I will continue to probably write about these kind of things in the future, because I think, and in fairness, there is a lot of sensational with anything. You're going to see sensational
Of
stuff.
course.
And so
And there were sensationalized aspects with my story. There were articles that were written that like were not even, they were kind of tangentially related to the realm of truth that I experienced, but were not entirely accurate. And it was in like tabloid magazines that it got kind of sensationalized. And I think one article said that I followed a butterfly, and that's how I went missing. Like some girl skipping through a meadow following a butterfly. And I remember getting so offended. I was like, I am not that dumb. Like,
obviously not. I mean, if anything, you were incredibly methodical and had an incredible presence of mind at that young age, to an impressive degree. Could you elaborate, or do you remember any other aspects of secondhand accounts of your experience that you felt were sensationalized, or elements that?
yeah, one, I think like it was quoting me or something, and it was like, it said like, I got losted. And I was like, because I guess they were trying to make me sound really young, but I think I've always been pretty well spoken, even as a little kid. And that one made me mad too. The thing I remember getting so mad about, and this wasn't even sensationalized, this was just, but the media called me little 6-year-old Haley Zega. And that made me so mad because I think I felt like they were talking down to me because they were calling me little 6-year-old. And I was just like, I am not that little. And of course I was, like, I was tiny, but that drove me up the wall. I just wanted them to call me by my name.
Yeah, Haley. That's right. Yeah. We'll call this episode Haley's Story or something to that effect. I'll definitely let you know when it's up. But
please do, yeah.
Did anybody? Are there any accounts that have emphasized your recollection of the companion, Alicia?
Not as far as I know. Like I said, I never read the book. And I think Tim, as far as I know, he did a great job.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
And I don't think that he really talked about it very much. The thing is, I can't really remember who I've told what to. Like I always tell the story, I think, in the same way. Mm-hmm. But I've talked to so many people about it, and there have been, there was a Dateline episode and like a bunch of articles in various publications, and I just can't remember. It's hard to keep straight who has said what or what aspects of the story people have focused on, because it's such a crazy, wild story with so many pieces, so many moving parts. Because I think some people focus kind of on the search and rescue side, and some people focus on like the story of the people who actually found me, who were not an official part of the search party. But yeah, it's really hard to keep track of who has said what.
Oh yeah. Well, I think it's also really important because I study a wide. I'm like you. I would call myself a hopeful skeptic. I'm open-minded, but I am intentionally skeptical so that I can kind of have a truth filter when I'm dealing with things that may be unusual. You look back at the history, Haley, and there's always this phenomena where people will tell a story one way, and then if they are exposed to their own recollections or rewritings of others,
definitely
they can kind of update. So I think it's actually really good that you haven't read that book, in the sense that you have your story and your story as you have told it, and you've not been influenced by other elements of it.
Right.
Now,
yeah.
I have heard and that's why I want to state that very clearly before I proceed to this next portion. I was very impressed to see that Russell Targ talked about your story in a video, and he had said that he had been introduced to your story by a colleague, I believe, out in Boulder, Colorado, a number of years ago, and that it had been brought to his attention that this story, as he told it, might be evidence of someone who, this might be evidence, I'll put it this way, of life after death. And I was thinking, what? Now, not in relation to you specifically, but his interpretation had been that Alicia might have been the spirit of a deceased person. Now, look, I don't know one way or another, but I'd love your opinion. Yeah.
I've heard that theory before too. And again, I don't really know. I think for me, it's important not to pin it down because, like, yes, it could have been the psychological thing. It could have been a guardian angel thing. It could have been a ghost. Sure. I don't know. And I don't need to know, really. I think it's great to talk about it and research it and formulate your own opinions on what this thing was. But for me, like, it was something that happened, and that's how I remember it. And I don't know that I will ever have the answer, and that's okay.
Yeah.
But yes, someone, and this is very half remembered. So,
Sure.
I would say don't quote me on this, but, we had heard that there was, and I tried to do some research on this later and I couldn't really find anything on it. So I don't know how true it is. We had heard that there was a girl who died out there or had been killed and her body was dumped.
Mm.
In that general area. And I don't remember the specific details, but I think it was like a family thing and it was really gruesome.
Mm.
And she had a middle name that was like similar to Alicia. It might have been like Alana or another A name. I don't know. But so people were like, oh, obviously it's the ghost of this child.
Right.
I don't know. And like I said, I tried to do some research on it and I never found anything really. More adept researchers than me might be able to find something on that. But I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I've heard that theory before.
Well, it also seems like you are, I'll put it this way, pleasantly detached from that theory because, and again, I want people listening to know that I'm not proposing that as an answer. That was something that I saw a fairly well-respected researcher of certain unexplained phenomena who does approach this scientifically. That was the story as he told it, and so I just wanted your opinion on that aspect of it because coming back to something that we addressed on the podcast a couple of weeks ago, in which you actually mentioned when you said you listened to it, was this idea of this third man factor. And again, I want to be really careful approaching theories when I'm talking with you, the actual experiencer, but I don't get to do this very often. And you seem so well grounded, so I feel like this is a good medium for this kind of discussion. That third man thing, I mean, when you reached out to me, Haley, I was so interested and the serendipity of the experience, was so interesting to me. I felt this kind of unusual feeling of, wow, I really feel like I'm supposed to talk to her. That's exactly how I felt, and I could not believe it when you emailed me. So I bought the Third Man Factor book and have been reading that for the last few days in advance of talking with you.
Yeah.
Were you familiar with that idea?
No, I had never even heard of it before I listened to your podcast, which is so crazy because I think it really well describes what has happened to me and what has happened to people who have been in similar situations to me. So it was insane to me that I had only ever heard like the supernatural explanations for it, which are also, I think, equally as fascinating. Sure. But I had never heard about it. And so I like Googled it and I was like, oh my God, that's crazy.
Yeah.
I only know a tiny little bit about it even now. And I kind of want to read the book, but I had never heard of it. And I was talking to my boss the other day about it. He's a documentary, science and technology filmmaker. And I was asking, like, have you ever heard of this thing? And he was like, he had never heard about the name, but like the whole, like, Jesus take the wheel, like, imaginary friend, guardian angel thing is something that I think is pretty well known. I just didn't know that there was a name for it. And the fact that it happens so, I won't say universally because obviously I don't know, but so commonly, for people who are in similar life and death experiences, it makes sense. And it's cool.
It is.
I don't know how else to say it. It's just cool.
Oh, no. Well, again, I think we often underrate what we as humans are capable of. And your story is a testament to that in the sense that, small as you were, hopefully by today's standards, you may not, have the aversion to being referred to as small than as you did at the time.
No, I'm like, I was a small child.
Yeah. So,
I was a kindergartner. That's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, to think that you were able to not only make it through that, but hearing you tell how you did it is extraordinary to me. And again, that just underscores human potential, and your story is so inspiring in that way. But looking, when you mentioned that we try not to look at these kind of experiences and say that there's a universality to them, But
Right.
many perceived unexplained phenomena seem to kind of have an aspect like that. For instance,
Yeah.
I interviewed a gentleman many decades ago. No, not decades. I'm sorry, years ago. I'm not that old. Gosh, I sound like it.
Decades and decades.
According to all my people, my listeners, I sound much older, and then they see me and they're like, "What? You're a young dude. What's up?"
Yeah, I will agree to that.
Oh, yeah, I sound like this old guy. People describe me with like a cowboy hat and cowboy boots. They say, I imagine this 50-something-year-old Texan, and then I see you, and it's like, whoa, man, you're like, what, 30-something? Yeah. So anyway, yeah, I'm much younger.
No, I Googled you.
Okay.
I saw like pictures, but I was just like, oh, okay.
Yeah, he looks a lot different. Yeah. But, a few years ago, not decades ago, I interviewed Dr. David J. Hufford, who was a researcher of sleep paralysis.
Okay.
And that was one of the interesting things is that now we kind of understand physiologically what will cause something like that. But he was fascinated with the interpretation of the experience and its consistency from culture to culture. I mean, why do so many different cultures have this interpretation of the so-called witch riding your back, or the old hag as it's referred to?
Yeah.
And he clearly thought it was a psychological phenomena, but the fact that that is something that is experienced in that capacity and so similar, I mean, you might make the case that there is a universality to some of these kinds of things. And so that, again, to me, Haley, kind of suggests, hey, man, the human mind is far more complex than we realize.
And the old adage, everybody's different and everybody's the same. Like, the way that my, I'm just going to call her imaginary friend.
Yeah,
because
sure.
that's always what I called her.
Mm-hmm.
The way that my imaginary friend manifested was much different. Like, I didn't see a bear. And I'm not, I know you guys were like, could have been imaginary, might not have been, but, I don't want to like put any judgment on that. But I also, I didn't see like, I think some people it's like a white light, or not a white light, but like a calming presence, or, I think it manifests really differently from person to person, but the overarching theme is that it's like a calming presence. It's a comforting presence.
Yeah.
So yeah, the fact that it has like a hint of the universality, but it's also very like specifically tailored to each person and the experience that that person is having, is fascinating.
Yeah. It really is. I mean, well, again, I just want to say it's been fascinating hearing your story. Is there anything else, I mean, that comes to mind?
I didn't tell how it ended. I don't think I ever said how I got out.
That would be important. Why don't we cover that part then? Let's hear how you got out.
Yeah, I mean, I obviously did. So,
yeah.
So I was talking about the search party and the fact that they were pretty much looking in the wrong place.
Yeah.
And so these two guys from Newton County, they're like very much like salt of the earth, born and raised out there, knew that part of the country really, really well. Went up to where they were headquartering the search party and said like, hey, we think we know where she might be. Like we think we have an idea of the area she might be. But it was so far out of the realm of where I was supposed to be, that they were just kind of like the official searchers were just like, no, like, thanks for your input, but we really don't think that that's any kind of possibility. And so they decided to go out on their own.
Mm-hmm.
And they had their mules out there, and they were the ones who found me.
Wow. Where were you when they found you? You were still by the river?
I was next to the river. Yeah, I was like on a bank of the river, and they gave me chocolate pudding and I think Diet Coke. Yeah.
And at that point you were probably like, and anything would taste great right now.
I really hate Diet Coke, but I think at that point I was down for anything. And then, I think there's a picture, like if you Google my name, there's a picture of me on one of the mules.
I've seen that picture. Yeah. There was a web page with some of the search effort that was involved. Do you recall how many people at the peak of the search were involved looking for you?
Oh, something like 1,000.
Yeah.
something like that. I might be overestimating that, but
I wouldn't be surprised.
people like, basically put their lives on hold
Yeah.
to come look for me. And that is something that I can never thank every single person that was out there, but and I think something that I've taken away from that is just the power of community. And my family is just like, we are never going to forget the impact that people we didn't even know just dropping everything to come and look for some little girl that, but I think it was one of those things where I could have been anybody's little girl. But just the sheer love and just pure, it really is like pure altruism of people just dropping everything to go tromp through some of the most remote forests that you can find in that region of the country, just because they could, and because they wanted the story to have a happy ending. And that's incredible. The power of community is just something that will never be lost on me, and the kindness of strangers. And sometimes in these troubled times, I get cynical and I catch myself feeling like there's no good in the world. But I will always have that thing that complete strangers did for me, that people I've never met and never will meet dropped everything to come and find me. And there's nothing but goodness in that. There's nothing but light in that. And there's nothing but hope in that act. And everybody did like what they could. And it all added up to this massive, massive effort. And I couldn't be more grateful.
Yeah, I think a lot of us feel that way, though. I mean, again, I feel blessed in a lot of ways just sitting here talking to you, knowing what the outcome of a situation like that could have been. And, to see you here, you're happy, you're healthy, you're an actress, you're moving to the big city, and, you're being successful. And I think everybody who was involved in that search would feel the same way. There's nothing in the world better than seeing you succeed and go on and live and be happy. And that's incredibly important. And like you said, I mean, it's hard not to feel cynical these days. And these kinds of stories give us an idea of the goodness in the world. And that's really important.
Yeah. I think, I'm an only child, or I was an only child, and for basically my entire life until I was an adult. Now I have step siblings, but my parents were never helicopter parents, which is really, really lucky, because I think it would have been really easy for them to become helicopter parents after, losing a child in the woods. But my parents were very much about like, the way that you pay these people back is you go and live your life to the fullest that you can.
Mm-hmm.
And you have a million adventures, and you like make your life what you want it to be. And that's how you say thank you.
That's true. Yeah.
So I'm trying to do that.
It looks like you're succeeding. Well, again, I just want to thank you so much for coming on the show and talking about this. I think it is so important for so many reasons we've already outlined here. But again, I hope we can keep in touch. And
of course, yeah. You're in Asheville, right? That's I've been once, and it's a great town. I would love to come back. I was there really, really briefly. So if I'm ever in that area, I'll look you up.
Yeah, definitely. I know.
And if you're ever in the big city,
I do make it up there from time to time. So we'll definitely have to do that. Did you have any final thoughts or anything apart from what we've talked about here?
I guess just the thing that I would say is like, never underestimate anybody.
Yeah.
Because it would have been real easy. I think actually that I as a kid I was underestimated, and that's why the search, because I was miles and miles and miles away from where they thought I was going to be. And I can totally see why they would underestimate me. But I guess the big takeaway for me is, doesn't matter background, creed, color. Don't underestimate anybody.
Yeah.
Because we're capable. I think we're all capable of greatness, and also, there's the converse of that. But I want to focus on, we're all capable of doing incredible feats. Humans are amazing.
Humans are amazing.
I think that's important to remember.
Yeah, especially 6-year-old Haley Zega somewhere out there in time. Boy, I tell you what, fascinating. Thank you so much. It has really been awesome talking with you.
Thank you. This was fun.
Yep.
Yeah, I've told this story so many times, but this was a more in-depth look, I think, than just telling it in a bar. So
there you go. Although I'm sure you probably told it in plenty of bars and coffee shops too.
So many, so many. Actually, my friends, my best friends are so familiar with this story and they get so tired of hearing it. So sometimes if I'm like meeting a new person at a party or something, I'll shout across the room, I'll be like, "Hey, Maggie, guess what story I'm telling?" And
Well, you will have reached a whole new audience telling it here on the Gralien Report. So again, thank you for being my guest.
Well, thank you so much for the opportunity. This was fun.